Hello there, and welcome once again to Rebuilding the Collection, or Journeys with Jazz in Lockdown. I'm Paul Palmer. We're still going through my old cassette tape collection of jazz albums, collected way back when and rediscovered in lockdown, and we're deciding which albums to either bin or keep. Joining me once again down the line from Houston, Texas, is Eric Blachman, one-time colleague and friend. Howdy, Eric. How you doing?
Not bad, Paul. How you doing?
Yeah, that's good. And you know, for those of you who are asking me who is this guy, I think it's fair to say he has met some of these greats and hung about with some real good jazz dudes. And I think I believe. Well, I'm not sure I believe him, but I think that's partly why I want him on the show. Isn't that right, Eric? You have met a few of these luminaries.
Yeah, but I think as we briefly said in recent times, a lot of it was by virtue of it was New York. I was younger. I was living in New York. I had thrust myself forward and cold called certain people for lessons, later to discover that this was the done thing to do if you're in the Cosmopolitan Center and you're somewhat ambitious. I was ambitious as far as wanting to find out more about jazz. I was scared to death about personally playing in front of people, but going to jam sessions, I helped cure this immensely to get over that, because at jam sessions, there would be, whether it's at the Blue Note on West 3rd Street, off 6th Avenue, Greenwich Village, New York, there would be big name people hanging out at the jam session and playing, or Barry Harris's Jazz Cultural Theater, or up at, I'm trying to think, a place called Sutton's on 145th Street up in Harlem. I remember getting rides up there occasionally. So this was the environment. And as luck would have it, due to my ornery nature and bohemian lifestyle that I was very comfortable with at the time, I was a part-time taxi driver in New York, driving from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I was a nocturnal creature. The jam sessions were not literally in the middle of the night. We had an Art Blakey jam session at the Jazz Cultural Theater, named for Art Blakey, who occasionally would be there, along with other luminaries. And the jam session would start 1 in the morning or so and go until 11 a.m., called the Art Blakey Breakfast Jam Session, Saturday night into late Sunday morning. It was fantastic. All of this was fantastic.
Well, it sounds great to me. I think I'd be a little bit intimidated personally if I had these luminaries to work with, but it sounds quite the thing. Well, that's great. A reminder that we're discussing my cassette collection by album title in alphabetical order, which allows us to discuss different albums from the same artist in different episodes. We finished off with albums beginning with A last time, so now we'll move on to the Bs. And I thought I'd have a few more B albums, but then I've actually got, and we'll go through the list in a minute, but I did find Bix Beiderbecke, which is a compilation, jazz classics in digital stereo. It's a BBC compilation, and I also found the best of Weather Report. And I thought, well, it's a best of. Perhaps we could find a different episode in which to do compilations. That might be the best sort of use for it. So here are the ones I've actually got. Milt Jackson, Bags and Flutes. Keith Jarrett, Belonging. maybe I should give the labels and the date. So Atlantic 1957 for Milt Jackson, Keith Jarrett Belonging ECM 1974, Wynton Marsalis Black Codes from the Underground, Columbia 1985, and Weather Report Black Market Columbia 1976. Well, I think it's a decent list, albeit quite short. But what do you think of it, Eric?
It's a great list to sink into. It's a short list, but varied.
Yes, very varied. Um, so, just before we go into the discussion, what do you think about what might be missing? An album beginning with B from that period or before. That's sort of 80s, early 90s.
Well, a name that comes to mind immediately is Count Basie. There's, I believe, an album called Basie Straight Ahead. Now, it perhaps harks back to pre-1970s, so it wouldn't be in the same time period.
Oh, well, that's cool because I'll have Bird in my cassette collection, and I'll have Dizzy maybe later on, and they'll come up with albums and Blakey, so forth. Pre-70s, obviously 80s. It's what I've been collecting up to that point, if you know what I mean, from that time and earlier. So yes, Basie's a good one. I don't have a lot of Basie. I also think you've got a Miles one that begins with B that I haven't got in my collection. Haven't you? We were discussing this earlier. What's it called? Oh yeah, Bitches Brew.
Bitches Brew.
Yeah, Bitches Brew.
Bitches Brew. Yes.
Do you think that should be in my collection?
Oh my gosh, if we're to start down that path, Paul, sure, I've got several hundred or more that should be in your collection. Bitches Brew.
Yeah, but they have to begin with B, of course.
Okay, sure.
Under the rules.
Perhaps, but personally, again, as far as where we diverge, inevitably with things, there are other Miles albums. There are two albums, Cooking and begins with C, and another album, both with Coltrane. I think it's late 50s Miles that I can't live without, let alone, of course, Kind of Blue, of course, and several other Miles albums.
But Bitches Brew, sorry, is. I mean, of course I've heard it since that time. To me, I wouldn't listen to it that much.
Well, I'm in agreement with you there. I think it's a little bit like Jack Johnson, Bitches Brew. The Miles Live at the Fillmore West of that time period, where it's just a collage of sound. What's that wonderful word? Cacophony of sound. That some of these things, they crescendo up to a fever pitch, and then they fade away. They come in and out of that kind of thing. It's like similar to a tone poem, Respighi's Pines of Rome. Things of that sort in the classical music world. So it's not hard swinging stuff where there's the beauty of hearing all the detail of the rhythm section and the two horns or three horns, the traditional quintet, sextet. It's kind of neither here nor there, though. Who am I to say that Bitches Brew is neither here nor there? As far as for our purposes, I think you can so deeply investigate.
So what you're saying is investigate it and see if I want to put it in.
Yeah,
but you're not gonna push it on me like some hardened jazz pusher.
I would never do that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with our discussion on the albums. I'm quite happy to do this in the order I gave them. So first of all, we got Milt Jackson, Bags and Flutes, Atlantic, 1957. And just as a, a slight note of interest, I know you're not totally keen on these. This is the All Music rating of 3. What do we think of Milt Jackson? First of all, what a vibes player, and a rarity in jazz, really. I mean, there are quite a few vibes players, but none as so prominent from the swing era, from the sort of main jazz, if you like, classic period. Do you think so?
Yeah, I agree. I love this. In many ways, I love this more than Milt Jackson with the MJQ. This is less conservative, and there's the fascination of 2 other rare solo instruments in jazz. Well, in this case, both flutes, but 2 different flute players, so that you can really be challenged to hear the nuanced or not stylistic differences between Frank West and Bobby Jesper. And
Yeah.
to hear that, in my case, as a saxophone player who came to the flute afterwards, it opens your palate, it opens your interest with hearing the subtleties of stylistic difference between the 2 flute players, both of them playing the heads together. Milt Jackson, perhaps, of course, rightfully so, dominating the scene. What I like is that John Lewis, for me, lent the pianist in MJQ, lent a bit of a conservative platform to things in my hearing of the modern jazz quartet. And here, without John Lewis, it's, boy, dare I say, some people are really going to disagree, more adventuresome.
Yeah, I mean it's a different sort of instrumentation. That combination of the flute and the vibes is quite an interesting one.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course we've got Kenny Burrell on the guitar, or is it Burrell?
Kenny
You say
Burrell.
Burrell, I say Burrell. And well, I mean, it really swings, doesn't it? And these tracks, great to listen to. The opening one is what's it called? Bag's New Groove. It's a blues. This is lovely, some lovely soloing on it from both Bags himself. Milt. Why did Milt call himself Bags?
Well, he certainly had big bags under his eyes. Perhaps that's it. I honestly don't know the real story.
Yeah, it could be that actually. I think I may remember reading something about that. Yeah, great soloing from Milt himself, and then I think that one is that one Bobby Jasper? I think it is. I'm going to have to check that. Yes. I think we're saying we're going to keep this one.
Absolutely. Well, you're going to keep it. I'm going to go out and buy it.
All right. At least I'm preaching the jazz message, the jazz messages. So that sounds very vaguely familiar.
Doesn't
right.
it?
Doesn't it? Yeah. So let's go on to Keith Jarrett's Belonging album. Oh, again, I think we've got an absolute classic. Not perhaps as well known as some of Jarrett's later stuff. I think we described this as his first album with the so-called European Quartet, which features Halle Danielson, John Christensen, and of course his sort of sidekick for many a long time, Jan Garbarek on saxophone. I do think there's some great aspects to this album. The dreamy playing of Garbarek, and the hallmark, the essential hallmark of Jarrett when he gets into his gospel grooving style. What do you think of this album?
I like it. Because of my own personal taste, I would probably have it on in the background, so to speak, while doing other things. Because with this kind of thing, personally, I'm less prone to listen to it again and again and again and again, seeking to find new things in it, because I'm much more of a straight ahead guy. But this foreshadows a lot of this type of jazz that was to follow. And I love it for that, really. You know, whether it was later on, Michael Brecker, Sanborn.
I mean, you're a sax player. What about Jan Garbarek and his particular way of playing the sax?
He's a very refined, very fine player who evokes a lot of color from the instrument. Certainly complements, it sounds to me, in every way possible, and then some, what Keith Jarrett was after in this music. I mean, really, you know, fantastic. I think a previous conversation, I was talking about a European Dizzy Gillespie big band, where Jan was the second alto player, I think, in the band. And he was younger than he is here. So it's always good to see all over the world people getting their earlier schooling with certain great jazz musicians, Dizzy Gillespie, and then breaking out and doing interesting, very interesting, unique, innovative things, as is the case here.
Yeah, in terms of tracks, I mean, I like the gospel style of Jarrett and his playing. He's got a track called "Long as You Know You're Living Yours," and the first track on the album, which is, sorry, I'm going to have to look it up. Spiral Dance. Yeah, that's quite an evocative number. It's sort of it's got this pedal note and going on, and then the spiraling nature of the head, Garbarek soloing. I like that, but I also like Garbarek's open-ended sax playing on tunes like Blossom, which is very dreamy, and I think it's capable of taking you to another place. If you just listen and let it wash over you, it's just amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually having me in the moment change my mind as far as I would give that a deeper listening. I wouldn't necessarily just have that in the background while doing other things.
Right, turning now to Wynton Marsalis, Black Codes from the Underground. What an album this is! Absolute corker, to coin a phrase. Yes. Why do we like this album so much? It's just conventional jazz. It swings like hell, and it is just awesome to behold. The Marsalis himself and his brother are, I think that's his brother on sax, isn't it? They are awesome. Yes, it is. Awesome to behold. They're at the top of their game, but what the rhythm section just swings all the way through. What do you make of this album, Eric?
Well, in current parlance, it's dope. It's dope. I mean, this album is killing. You know, they didn't say that back then, but it's what we would say now. I mean, it's dope. It's Kenny Kirkland and Tane are killing it all along the way, providing a whole undercurrent and underpinning that's different from most anyone else of their generation at the time. So we talked about the Young Turks, the Young Lions. Wynton comes up, he puts on a suit and tie, and so do so many others, including another father-son duo of the day, Chico Freeman and Vaughn Freeman, his father, both saxophone players. They were part of this movement, during the era of Reagan Thatcher, putting on suits and ties and representing themselves, visually more serious, taking themselves more seriously, perhaps ingratiating themselves with major record labels like Columbia in this case. But by this time, I think that what Wynton is doing, later on, he would go down the path of Ellingtonia and the Lincoln Center later after that, jazz orchestra, and doing standard repertoire and so on and so forth. But this is very adventurous. I think he's out to make a statement.
What statement is he actually making? I mean, he's not. He's out of step with a lot of his contemporaries, isn't he? But why is he? It's almost like, to me, he's gone. Well, you're going this path of exploration and experimental music, but if you want to hear jazz, I'll show you jazz, and I'll make it more jazz than you have ever heard. Am I right?
Well, I think it's in the title. After all, during this time, Miles Davis is still around. Prior to this time, there were arguments and debates in magazines here, Downbeat magazine. There was a debate as to whether, when we close our eyes, can we tell whether a jazz musician is black or white? And to come out with something at this time in the mid 80s, Black Codes, to me is making a statement that there are particular black codes to this music. It's to push front and center that jazz, born in the melting pot environment of New Orleans, the 1890s, 1900. African-American, Creole, and white, certainly got the Black American experience dominating as the dominant ingredient in the mix. Certainly the blues foundation of it all is in fact that. I think he's pushing front and center a bold statement that it's black music, that there are particular black codes that if you're to codify the music, that should run through it. And this is a potent cocktail. Again, I can't emphasize enough. In my experience, I feel within my whole chest cavity, Tane and Kenny Kirkland.
Absolutely.
Holding it down. And
they swing in a way that, I haven't heard many bands quite swing in this way and with that, and it's Moffat actually as well, double bass playing.
Absolutely.
I think it just sits on it all the time. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. With another friend of mine in England, we used to have these discussions that would become arguments, and I think what would get his goat is I would finally say that it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And here we have this.
Standout tracks for you?
I love them all.
If I was, well, yeah, I like them all. I think they're all brilliant. Frizinian Man. What's that's a swinging type number, as is Black Codes, the title track. For We Folks is a kind of, it could be a waltz. Is it a waltz? It's slow enough to be a waltz, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But wow, for me, probably Black Codes itself. Well, thanks for that. That's staying with us. And finally, let's look at Weather Report Black Market, Columba 1976. This, by the way, has an all music rating of 4.5. Black Codes had an all music rating of 5. So that's like out of 5. 5 stars out of 5. So, I mean, I can't argue with that. I know you don't like the ratings, but 4.5, not bad itself. What do you think of Weather Report and this particular album? I kind of, it's growing on me. It's been in my drawer for quite a while, but I've been listening to it recently, and it is growing back on me.
You could see a doctor about that.
Yes, cut off this album. It's growing in a very embarrassing place. Well, any ideas? Frivolity aside.
I heard Weather Report around the same time that I heard Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. And I was really bugged by Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. And I remember walking away from that feeling Donald Byrd wasn't barely playing the range on his trumpet and flugelhorn beyond an octave, barely beyond an octave, and the heavy backbeats and so on and so forth. But this is more potent. This is more varied. And Zawinul, in hindsight, was quite an innovator with this music. After all, to witness Zawinul in black and white videos playing with Cannonball Adderley on YouTube now, and to realize this is the same Zawinul 20 years later with Wayne Shorter creating all these beautiful tapestries of innovation.
Yeah.
And evoking moods that weren't brought forward before. Is fantastic stuff.
Yeah, let's have a look at some of the tracks here. Again, I'll probably have to look them up on this jacket here. So Black Market, the title track. Cannonball, I will return to. Elegant People's quite a well-covered track. I think it's actually in some real book, some real books. But what I would say about this album overall is it's very synthy. You do have, as you would expect to have, I guess, with the likes of Zawinul, sorry. You've got Fender Rhodes, you've got various synthesizers from that time. So to me, it's the fragmentation of what we would regard as overall straight ahead jazz, because you're going in that almost electronic fusion way. It's not completely so, but there's a lot of it going on in this album. But in terms of ideas, there's plenty there, and it's got some great playing on it, hasn't it?
Well, if you and I were sitting here doing this 30 years ago, I think I would have been more dismissive and said, well, Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, we're doing this to reach more people and to make more money. And 30 years later, it gives more time to reassess, have a look back, which is always going to give you a dimension you can't have any other way. That's a worthy dimension. There's nothing like careful, thoughtful consideration over time, especially in light of what has happened since. So for me, always someone of the stature and depth, Zawinul and Wayne Shorter and the others have confirmed with the passage of time the worthiness of these pursuits. I mean, that's really it.
Yeah. So there's a track called Harandnu, I think it is. It's got this kind of 6/8 rhythm, meter to it, but then it's kind of disrupted by a bar of what sounds like 5. It sort of gives it a little skip. So not only are the sounds that you're using breaking down because you're using different kinds of not conventional, unconventional sounds, you're also seeing the dissolution of conventional form, which is fine. I love that, what they do in that. And then there's, of course, Cannonball, as I was mentioning earlier, which is the tribute of Zawinul to his former, have I got that right? His former band leader.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sorry, that's a warm sort of mellifluous tribute. I think we're going to say we're keeping this one as well. Well, I certainly am. And you'll have noticed again that there's nothing from the 21st century here, or even the 90s or the late 90s, because cassette tapes are very much before the CD era. But since we're looking at artists or albums with names alphabetically from the beginning of the alphabet, let's take a moment to review more modern offering beginning with B, which arguably should be in the collection. Well, I've got this album here. It's called Blackwood, and it's by Eddie Daniels. Now, I can't actually see the date on it. Do you know what date that would be, roughly? Because
certainly sometime, I believe, in the late 1980s. 86, maybe, 84, 85, 86, after. Yeah.
So really, that
GRP, right?
That doesn't really qualify. But for the sake of argument, I thought I'd put in something slightly controversial. How about Back to Black by Amy Winehouse?
Oh, you see, I remember once listening to Amy Winehouse, not knowing I was listening to Amy Winehouse, and enjoying it. And I honestly can't remember what tune it was. It was something very loose and distinctive. I said, wow. Then, the whole soap opera of her short time of notoriety. At the time, kind of, bugged me a little bit. If I would hear her name brought up. And
how so?
Sorry?
How so?
Well, by this time, whether it was Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and the generations that came after, some serious stuff had been brought forward with vocalists in the world of jazz and jazz-related musics. And it just struck me that it was time to have a certain focus on the music and manage one's life so that the theatrics could be off to one side.
Yeah, well, that would be great, but it didn't happen that way. And she could, I think she could have, if she'd focused and gone on to perform, she could have maybe reached the heights of what you're talking about, those luminaries. I wouldn't put her there. One thing, I'm looking at an album. It has elements of jazz, as you say, jazz-related music. It's not pure jazz because it simply doesn't have the element of improvising that you would expect. However, I do think she swings. And if you listen to the timing on some of what she's doing, I can't think of Tears Dry on Their Own. Let's look at that song. She sings the main refrain. She's got some swing going on. Yeah, there are some gimmicks. There are some tired old cliches, but there was a freshness to me about her playing. Besides, give her a break. She's an English female singer. I doubt that you're going to have many English female singers but we are going to have many English female singers in this collection. I mean, yes, we know about the greats. We know the Billie Holidays. We know the Ella Fitzgeralds, the Sarah Vaughans. We know all these people. But where are the English?
Cleo Lane.
Yeah, I mean that's the go-to. All roads lead to Cleo Lane, but I think it's not. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. Anyway, I think we've had a good go on that one. I may not persuade everyone, and I would say this is an opportunity. If anyone listening to this program has any ideas, it's for them to pitch in and let us know. We'll be adding more information about how to contact us in the details about the program, but for now you can send us a tweet to @collectionbuild. That's all one word, @collectionbuild. Well, thanks for being with us today, and I hope you've enjoyed our deliberations. Today we have kept all the albums that we have listened to or discussed, at least. You may drop us a line if you agree with these decisions, or indeed, even if you don't. Next time, we'll roll on to some new alphabetical offerings. So we'll see you then. Thanks, Eric, for your input this time again.
Sure, Paul.
And I am Paul Palmer.